I've been thinking about violence in our society a lot lately as a concerned citizen.
Oh, really, Daniel? What are your thoughts towards this subject?
Well, I think that young people nowadays are so much more violent than they used to be. It makes me feel sad on the inside.
I don't know if you're right or not, but I bet we could find out if we had some way to operationalize this issue.
We should totally come up with a factorial design that could quantify those variables. Let's do it.
That's a really good idea. We should make the study a cohort sequential study to assess the relationship between violent crime not only within age groups longitudinally, but between age groups cross-sectionally. So first off, I think we should start by defining and quantifying our variables. Violent crime rate, dummy-coded according to severity of violence, and then averaged could serve as a solid dependent variable to represent general violence because it gets turned into an interval scale. The birth year of each cohort and their ages at each time of measurement will reflect the independent variables of the study and don't require any manipulation. They're already continuous variables. That's actually a really awesome thing.
How do you feel about having three cohorts, like each one 15 years apart from each other? We could have the birth year of the first cohort be 1950, and then 1965, and of course, 1980.
That sounds alright to me. I was also thinking that we should measure the violent crime rate of our participants every 5 years to gather 3 points of data per cohort. I was thinking that each cohort would have their violent crime rate assessed when they turn 20, 25, and 30. So, for example, participants born in 1950 will have their respective crime rates measured in 1970, 1975, and 1980.
Speaking of participants, I think we should use random sampling techniques for our sample to be truly representative. Maybe something like a lottery system within a state census registry.
It couldn't hurt to have a good amount of people within each cohort. Is 100 per cohort okay with you?
Sounds good to me, but how are we going to acquire each participant's criminal records?
I was thinking that at the beginning of the study, we have each participant agree in writing to grant with informed consent, of course, to grant us temporary access to their criminal records one time during the years of measurement to allow for the anonymous dummy coding of any possible violent crimes.
Sweet.
So one thing I do want to cover is the validity and reliability concerns with respect to the cohort sequential design. So a few things that I've noticed. So a few of these threats are the biggest one that stands out to me is something called history effects, or like the events that happen between like different measurements. So like if an event happens between measurement number 1 and measurement number 2 that has an effect on one of the variables that you're testing, it could essentially corrupt the results of your study. Mortality effects as well, or just people dropping out or dying within your study, which is something that does happen. Maturation is another one. So basically people, I guess just like the positive or negative, the expected changes that come along with growth in age. There's also a really big temptation within a lot of research to regard observational studies, such as our cohort sequential study here, to regard it as causal and to mistake that observation for causation, when in reality, we don't know necessarily, and we can't make the claims that one of these variables causes the other one, definitively. So keep that in mind as well.
12 seconds later.
Okay, so to get back in conclusion, really, this proposed method that we're looking at here with respect to the violence rate amongst cohorts and between cohorts is, number one, quasi-experimental in nature. Obviously, you can't make people, become violent or not become violent. That would be very unethical. Also, we have two independent variables. Like we said, our cohorts and then the ages at the time of measurement. with the dependent variable in this case being basically a dummy-coded version of some sort of criminal history. So basically, according to the according to the severity of the crime that these people committed, so basically just establishing, because the point is that all of these variables, it's okay for the independent variables to be nominal, but the dependent variable has to be continuous. That is not non-negotiable. Statistics that can be used to analyze this design, really, it's just by graphing it. Just by graphing the design, you'll be able to analyze the interaction effects as well as the actual effects of the design. And then, of course, as with any design, there are positives such as eliminating the internal validity concerns of longitudinal and cross-sectional studies, but at the same time it's not perfect because it does have issues. We want to thank everyone that made this video possible, including Jonathan Welly, Daniel Layton, and Joshua Henderson, as well as Dr. L for a good semester. Thanks for watching, guys.